Well, I guess we'll get started to honor your time, everyone who's here. Thanks for joining us. My name's Risa Shimoda with the River Management Society, and I'm here with James Major from the River Management Society and also Tali MacArthur. And we're going to get going. And this is part of, I wouldn't even call it an official series, but part of a series of conversations that we have had over the last few years about water trails and those who manage them, those who are beginning to manage them, and what needs folks have who are involved in the water trails. Because there are many and they're very different. So Tally, can we see your screen?
I will share it. Sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the topic today is reaching your water trail audience, those who come and visit and use your water trail. To some degree, though, maybe walkways along the water trail, maybe mainly people who are on the water. And we have two people who are planning to be here. One is unfortunately not here because he had some personal things come up. So we have a solo star personality here with us today. um, Tali MacArthur. Next slide, Tali. Yeah, so I don't envision that we're going to be talking about anything controversial, but I think just if you could honor the folks who are speaking, that'd be great. And we will be recording. We are recording right now. We'll have a recording posted within a day or two. We'd love to see you if you're here so that please, unless something is extraordinary, we'd love to see you with your webcam on. Please ask questions in the chat. If we get to a stopping point, we might say, hey, just unmute yourself. This group is not going to be that large, so I think we could probably do that. But if something occurs to you, put it in the chat. We'll try to address it as we go forward. Okay, I think that's good. Next slide. So Tally, just want to introduce you to, like, what you do for work, since we have a little bit of time and people appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, sure. Hi. I imagine I've seen some of you before on some of these roundtables, but I'm Tali MacArthur. I work for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, and I serve as the coordinator of Pennsylvania's water trail program, statewide water trail program. The program is a partnership with a couple of our state agencies, the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. And together we administer a water trail program that has 29 designated trails. Over 2,500 miles of trails have been designated as water trails. They are managed by local partners on the ground. I think I might have seen one join us this afternoon. But we work really closely with local entities on the ground. They might be land conservancies, watershed organizations, tourism bureaus, planning commissions, greenways and trails groups. But they are the ones who do the daily work of mapping, well, sharing resources about the water trail, hosting events on their water trail, creating itineraries and maps and websites to provide information and outreach to trail users. And the water trail just tries to provide technical assistance or training or networking opportunities. We also have a small grant, sort of re-grant program where we're able to give small grants to projects that are advancing access to those water trails. So that's the capacity that I'm here with you today.
Great. Thanks, Tally. So we have we're going to share a couple of poll questions and then I'm going to launch it. So this is sort of the pillar of the conversation today. How well do you understand your water trail audience, like who it is, where they are, where they're from, so forth? And then how well do you feel that your organization serves them with whatever you serve them with? So just going to take a quick poll to see um, Some of you have already responded to this. I'll take another minute.
Not popping up on my screen this time.
If not,
Wonder where
okay.
it's hiding.
No, hold on a second. Maybe, let's see. Some of you have filled it out already.
It might be because we're co-hosts, Risa.
Okay.
Let's try this again.
Oh, wait. Well, I see the results.
Yeah, there we go. So those who responded, let's say those who responded, most of you think you know the audience fairly well, and then you can see on how well do you think you serve your user with information resources. This result is a little bit similar to what we heard from Tali with the poll that you fielded in Pennsylvania, where I think you said 9 out of 10 among those who were surveyed said they understand who their water trail audience was. 5 out of 10 felt like they served their audience really well. So if that is at all, if the results of today's poll or Tali's previous Pennsylvania poll ring true, maybe this will help a little bit by identifying. It's kind of our opinion based on input, some discussion, and for consideration, identification of your water trail audience. Go ahead, Tali.
Do you want me to advance the slide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go back one.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So we're thinking that there are 3 audiences, general audiences. One is the locals. It might be your club. It might be your department if you like work for an agency. It might be your town or a watershed council. You know, any of the above, those who have identified that there is a water trail, who have rallied to designate it, who support it, and so forth. So this is you. And I'm sorry Darrell's not here because the picture on the left was the Arkansas Canoe Club. So we're sorry that he's not here to see his buddies there. Okay, next slide. And then there are people who have heard about water trails, think they want to get on the water, don't know too much about it. They go to an event. They might see a meetup, online. They might see something in the paper or something posted at their church, like come out and see what our river or bay or canal is like. And those are our future enthusiasts. Those are the ones that we're really interested in welcoming to our waterway, our river, and those who probably need the most coaching information and resources to become acquainted, to become familiar, to become part of the community, and to even contribute from a stewardship standpoint. So beginners, people, all the newbies. And then there are, we hadn't thought about this until Darrell kind of pointed it out. There are many times where experienced paddlers, they know how to do safety. They're maybe expert boaters, certainly experienced boaters, but they want to go to a new place where they're visiting Aunt Mary in Chicago and want to know where to go. Or they've heard about a place, and they've driven by it and it's a couple hours away. They want to go check it out. So your information can help them also, but in a slightly different way. So those are the basically three audiences that we're viewing your community when you are serving the public. Has someone Tali, we're going to ask at this point, are there others, have you guys and gals kind of dissected your audience like this or in different ways? And this is not, before we talk about what we do in terms of serving them, just have you, done this kind of targeting or strategic differentiation between those who are users? Is this old hat? Maybe everybody does this, so we just don't know. Or is this something that might be a helpful way to categorize those who are on your river. Anyone, if you just want to unmute, put it in the chat. I really like to.
And I'll just say, just to give this like a little tiny bit more context, I think what kind of generated this conversation is, just constantly evaluating like our communication with our trail users. And, anybody in the world of communications is always like, well, who's your target audience, right? When you have a message you want to get across, like it's always who's your target audience. So that was a little bit of context for this conversation. So I guess that's kind of how it related back to the poll questions, in terms of how well, do you know and understand your water trail audience? So if you think back also to how you responded to the poll, if there's, something that you wanted to share based on that, or as Risa said, with the three audience members that we identified, or the three groupings. So we're just curious if we've kind of nailed that in terms of the three audiences, or if there's another way that you would dissect or characterize the people that use your trails.
Right. And yeah, please, raise your hand or unmute yourself. But the answer is not the public. That is not the answer. Unless you have a really, really big staff, media budget, and amazing outreach capabilities. So you want to cover everyone that the evening news people would be speaking to on network news. So short of having the capacity to really talk to the public, then knowing that not everyone in the public is going to want to come to your water trail next week or over, Easter vacation or something like that. Another way to try to reach people is more strategically, more surgically. And we're curious to see if there are other categories, other different defined categories, because this might not capture everyone. It might not capture a type of audience, and there might be another group that might be in your community that would be really important to single out. So
I have a question, a thought.
yeah,
It's actually a question, really, because I actually like your categories. But would it make sense to ever categorize people by age? Mostly, I'm thinking youth versus adults. And then I guess that would also go along with people who are coming with a program, either a rec department or a youth group or something. Should they get distinguished in any way?
So somebody like a solo paddler versus somebody coming with a group. I'm just kind of digging deeper.
Well, I'm thinking of, a programmed group. I think what I'm thinking of is they probably would fall into the beginner category of, Risa said a church group. I thought that was a great example, or a rec department, that they're holding an event and people are coming probably because they don't have the experience themselves. So they feel more comfortable going under the guise of somebody who hopefully knows what they're doing. I guess Boy Scout groups and Girl Scout groups could probably fit into that category too.
yeah, I agree. And I think that they're like the novice group, but they're different in that there's an intermediary. If you wanted to reach out to the Girl Scout group, you want to find the Scout leader. Or you want to find the church program director, because that person is going to bring the kids. So it's sort of like it's like an intermediary, and then you want to find out, okay, but if you wanted to find all those people, you could contact the schools, contact the scout groups, contact the churches in your area to reach those kids, those people who would bring those novices. That's a great suggestion. So ultimately, what you want to provide to them is novice information, but you're finding them or reaching them, engaging them a different way. You're not trying to find all the sixth graders or Girl Scouts, right? You want the moms, the den mothers, and stuff like that. Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. Anybody else? Because that's a lot of people. Anyone else? Maybe you run a water trail program, or you welcome a different slice of human.
We've had a couple of comments in the chat, Risa. Amanda says, keeps.
I've heard the distinct intermediate advanced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like those groupings, and sometimes we need to divide the audience into geographical proximity.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible to elaborate a little bit on the geographical
Yeah.
proximity?
Yeah, Lewis, what does that mean for you guys?
What I mean by that is, of course, who are the people in the adjacent counties and within the county of where your river trail is present, because those people are going to have a whole different usage of your facilities and of your amenities than the people that are coming from out of state that see it online that are then going to be taken care of. So what are you offering each of those groups when they contact you, or how do you divide that up? Because some people are just day users, some people are multi-day users of your trail. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we got into that a little bit with the local versus I guess we kind of put the far away people kind of a little bit into this experienced paddler group, the people who are experienced paddlers, but they're new to your trail. So that's how we were kind of thinking about it. But I do like even taking that a step further for the day users and multi-day users. And yeah, that's great. I thought of something just now, but I don't know if it would matter so much with your communications with these different groups, but maybe more if you are offering events or services. Again, we kind of came at this from a communications standpoint, like what messaging do different groups need? But just one thing that might be is differently abled users. So I don't know if that just came to me just now, but like whether or not your communications or your outreach would be you know, kind of catered towards different user groups in terms of their abilities to use your trails, right? So which parts of your trail might be more accessible, or which ones might be less, you know, less than ideally accessible. So that might be a way that you might think about your communications and your audience.
Yeah, that might also slice through all of the above types of people, beginners or experienced paddlers or locals, but in terms of identifying how your water trail accommodates visitors, it's one way that we accommodate visitors. We offer parking. We offer accessibility acknowledgement. We offer hot dogs, whatever it is, that might vary.
Yeah.
So let's see. Brenda, our communication strategies are very different for local versus non-local. So that is a group differentiation for us regardless of ability. Yeah, let's go through, Brenda, let's come back to you and see what you think, because we are going to suggest in the next few slides, and then that's all we have, is how we might differentiate targeted services to these three audiences, the ones that we've identified. And again, this is from mostly gut and experience as opposed to statistics or any kind of analysis, hard analysis. Go ahead, Tali. Yeah, so there's some amenities, if you will, or services that we provide to anybody. So this is a kiosk at a launch at a launch or access point on the Roanoke River. On the left is a campsite sign from the French Broad River Keeper Mountain True. Everybody who visits should know this. If they don't know it, they should check it out. And even if it's familiar, like I've been to lots of campsites, but I really should still read this one anyway to see if there's anything important or notable. Hazard signs are important for everybody, whether you're familiar with the river or not. If you're familiar, it's a reminder, or you might be with a guest. It's definitely important. And then wear a life jacket. Everybody should wear a life jacket. So that's for everybody. Now and then for locals, let's go back to locals. Yeah, we thought it was interesting. We're telling them to wear a life jacket also, but add another, and this is from American Whitewater, add another little message, be an example for everyone who sees you. You're going to be viewed as an expert. Make sure you're setting a good example. And then for some of the other photos, these are, depict events that are hosted, created, organized by a local group or those who live near in the community of the local group, the watershed group, water trail manager, likely frequent users, probably live nearby, to Lewis's point, and will host events. This is not to say like all these people are part of that community, but they were hosted by that local community doing a cleanup, middle pictures, or there's several rivers who have really great traditions of doing an annual multi-day event on their river. And Tali pointed out earlier that Lehigh Valley Sojourn, which has been hosted by a group who lives in the Lehigh Valley, the Lehigh Watershed, are trying to use this event to broaden their appeal and invite other people to come visit the Lehigh. So that's a programmatic part of that. But if you said who runs that thing, it would be Mary, Harry, and Joe, who've been around for a while, and he was president, and then she was secretary, and then she became president, he was secretary. It's like a lot of the groups are kind of like that, right? They've been around for a while, but they're important because they have the institutional memory and the history about the area. So this is like the locals group where they may be the pillar of the Water Trails program, but they're certainly important, and they probably log more days because they go there all the time or all summer long. So these are things that, and then novices, what do you provide for them? It's like super basic. Again, a life jacket sign, but a little bit more aggressive, saying you really should wear this because something bad can happen if you don't wear it. Introducing them to leave no trace, and then having a sign that says, this is where the river is. This is where you get in. Super basic things, but here's a nice, attractive paddle trail sign, some Iowa, and some rules that are, if you take the time to read them. So telling people about access points, water level information that it can vary, or information about knowing that the water could be cold, temperature is important, where the parking is, bathrooms, cell coverage. Make your call now because you won't be able to make a call for another hour or so or whatever. Talk about gear, safety, 911, or if there are places where there's safety equipment, we've got a backboard a mile in, anything like that you think is important. And then best practices. And we're not saying when and how you communicate this. You can't tell everybody that at the put in. It's way too much. But at some point in their experience of getting ready, looking it up on the website, going to some meeting, preparing that day, driving to, getting out of their car and getting to the river, somewhere in there, we want to be able to share this kind of stuff with them. And then with the experienced people, they know how to paddle, they've been around, they were looking for a new place to go. They'd like to know about the group that's at the place, that's the new place they're going to go. They'd like to find nearby places to visit. Those are, just some examples of what I would want to know as an experienced paddler when I'm going to an unfamiliar place. So Northern Forest Canoe Trail does a great job, and they kind of, I wouldn't say they have to, but they realize that they need to provide a ton of information about their water trail because it's not named after a state or a river. It's a bunch of places. It's a long trail that goes through 740 miles. It goes through many states. And if you didn't know the name of this trail, you would not know that it's a cool place to go to. So they go over, bend over backwards to provide tons of information about what you can do in the towns where all the access points are and so forth. They're in the middle. If you are a paddler and you want some detailed information, Georgia River Network has an app, as do many groups now, for specific information about paddling on their river or in their watershed, that has everything from the access point to where the Starbucks is or where the hotels are, good restaurants. Or this is awesome put in because it's right off the interstate. It'll, give you encapsulated information like that. To the right, the James River Association promotes the James River is, there's a water trail in the James River, but then it goes to the, where it meets the ocean. There's a tidal area, and in the late summer, there are sturgeon jumping all out of the water. It's pretty awesome. So they promote that. And if you're going to the area kind of during that time period, you will definitely see sturgeon jumping as an attraction. They'll encourage you to go. You can hop on a boat and go to the place where they jump. And then on the upper right-hand side, there's a Green River Narrows race that was pretty impacted by Helene. This fall, it doesn't look like that anymore, but that race has been taking place since 1987. And there were about 12 or 15 people racing there, and their significant other or parents or kid or something like that. But now there are thousands of people who go to watch this race at the very beginning of November every year. And you just wouldn't know until you know. If someone mentions it, you go look it up and you go, oh my gosh, this is an amazing event that happens. If you were in Asheville, Henderson, Saluda, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, you would hear about this event and location. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I think, well, that's sort of it. I think the main idea here in this discussion was to identify that it's possible to differentiate between your audiences, and at least this is one way. And Lilia brought up another way to find or serve a specific type of group. The novices that are kind of led or organized by someone who may not be an experienced paddler, but someone who's kind of speaking for and organizing them, and acknowledging when providing communication about accessibility for anyone, whether it's experienced novice or with local groups. And this is like audience targeting 101 or one. But we hadn't heard of this before, so I thought it was worth kind of bringing up. Any questions, or maybe let's go to the chat, more stuff in the chat.
Yeah, so Louis, of course, I think, you bring up a great point. The information that was especially shared, say with the novice slide is, of course, we would want this information available for everyone, right? You're not going to like hide it on your website and say like, if you're a novice, click here. But, I think the idea is that people can only take in so much information, right? So if you kind of identify a certain audience and you identify their needs and you identify what it is you really want them to know, then you're going to make that information like front and center. And you might not tell this audience about your once a year paddle the highest running water level, opportunity, because that's not going to be really what they're interested in. So, it's not a matter of not having this information available to all, but knowing that we only have a limited capacity for taking in information, like what's the main message that we want to get to this audience? And how do we, if there's different information that we would want to give to experienced paddlers or from somebody coming out of town, we might say, okay, this experienced user coming from out of town probably knows that water levels and temperatures vary. So let's focus more on getting them here for a certain event and building up our, tourism goals or whatever. So I think that's kind of where we were going with this. Not that this is information that would be hid from anyone, but when you're prioritizing what message for who, figuring out a way to do that.
And then Lewis, you also had a question about accessibility. The only like legal, not only, the legal requirements for constructed facilities, it depends if it's federal or state funded. So it's either American with Disabilities Act, which has certain requirements for like paved, constructed facilities, bathrooms, parking lots, signs, and stuff like that. And the American Barriers Act, which has requirements for in the buildings, like how high you need to have a if you have more than 2 sinks, one of them needs to be handy wheelchair height, things like that. ADA only goes, it also, relative to water context, it will extend to like a gangplank that's going out to a marina. So it'll tell you how wide wide the walkway has to be, how you can't have more than a certain acuteness of angle if you're going to turn, and that the slope can't be too steep, that kind of stuff. It will have those requirements, but it won't, once you get to like from the parking lot and you're heading down a trail to the water, it does not apply to anything like that. So there are trail guidelines over on the land side. So there are trail guidelines for slope and width and roughness, like it can't be more than a certain amount of roughness, but those are not ADA requirements. So there are guidelines for acknowledging a certain level of accessibility. But to your point, from the input that we have gotten over a couple of different projects from people they're like avid kayaker wheelchair people, those type people will say, do what you can. You should be ADA compliant for the elements of your facility that are required to adhere to ADA. Beyond that, do what you think is appropriate for your community, and then the important part is communicate what's there. So if I'm blind or I have cerebral palsy or I can't walk, I can find out what you have at your facility and I can make a decision of whether or not I should go there, or if I should go to the access point that's 5 miles away. So it's not 100%, check the box thing, because a facility could be really easy to deal with from a wheelchair when it's dry, and a mess and really, really difficult if it's raining or, in the snow. So it's sort of not an inexact science, but in a way it's kind of cool because rivers are not exact either. They're changing. So I hope that helps. And then it's whether or not you want to invest is sort of up to you.
May I comment on that?
Yeah.
Well, we're in South Carolina, and this would be at a state level, a state park level. So I guess that would have to be our ultimate guidelines, is what parameters they already have in place along that line. But it's simply access to the river, as far as whether we have a throw-in point for kayaks, canoes versus a kayak throw-in point with some type of landing that someone in a wheelchair could actually get into a kayak, something as simple as that, because we know that the vast majority of our users are not going to be handicapped people. But when we start talking about changing a simple throw-in point to a handicap accessible landing, your money quickly changes, and your time and your effort quickly changes. That's kind of where I start with this thought.
Yeah, well, I can't remember where it is, but I've seen a facility in South Carolina where there were steps down to the river from the parking lot. And if they wanted to make it wheelchair accessible, you'd have to build a ramp that was like 4 miles long, just a gradual slope, gradual slope, gradual slope. It was ridiculous. So what they did was they just closed it, which also was pretty unsatisfying. They just taped it off, like you can't go there. Well, somewhere the logic has to prevail, and, maybe you ask people who otherwise would go there, wheelchair people, to go to the next put-in. There's so many wonderful places to put in. I don't know what they've done there, but, all I can say is, well, state for sure, they would know. They would probably have best practices, and then if they want to go beyond what's required, then kind of up to them.
Yeah, and Brenda has commented a little bit. I know that they've done some universal access and ADA access kind of work there. So she has put in the chat something that they had done. And again, parts of it sounds like I don't know if she wants to jump in, but with the accessibility, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every single feature in the whole area is accessible.
Yeah, the location, we replaced a very steep, large stone step access with an ADA compliant low angle ramp. And we worked with a farmer who owned the adjacent land, and he gave us an access easement so we could build this low angle ramp. And we increased the size of the parking lot, but with the variability of the water level in our water trail, like we don't have a floating, ADA accessible launch location. There are other features that we were prohibited from adding on to make this more accessible. But the low angle launch is helpful for everybody, whether they're, have some physical challenge or just after paddling all that way, not climbing the stone steps and hauling your boat up those steps. But unfortunately, we can't make things 100% accessible because of the dynamic nature of the water.
Yeah, and Brenda, did you want to talk a little bit, not to put you on the spot, about the way that you target your communications for, I think you said local versus visitors? Did you mention that?
I did, and for us, the visitor part is a shortcoming. We have a really strong communication strategy with our local paddlers and recreators in our watershed. Pennsylvania has a River of the Year program, and we won the River of the Year program in 2022. We had a ton of visibility, but there's a lot of local people that paddle, and we have good communication with them through social media and email. We have a lot of support for our organization, but I think we really missed the boat on connecting with people outside of our area, not necessarily attracting them to our area for a longer paddle or visiting from afar. And part of that is a lack of amenities. We don't have very many outfitters. We don't have very many places for people to camp. So we need to work on a different communication strategy to try to get people who are not within our immediate area.
Okay, so Brenda, have you talked about who that is? I mean, are they towards a city, or are they the colleges, or are they in terms of how do you find everybody else? What is everybody else?
Yeah, and we have to work on everybody else. So we actually are located equidistant between Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. So there absolutely should be a recreation economy where we draw people to our area who want to, that would be a day trip from any of those three major metropolitan areas. And I just don't think that we're effectively reaching them and communicating with them and drawing them to our area. So that's something we need to work on. We're really strong with our local paddling community, but we're probably not reaching visitors, regional visitors.
Is there anyone on the call? I know we're a small group, but is there, and I see there's a message from Raymond, but is there anybody in the group that feels that they have, if they think about their users, and I know there was somebody in the poll that said they've actually done some surveying or whatnot, but anybody kind of in a waterway that does draw from afar, or that kind of targets out of state, out of area users with their communications, or I don't know, again, just an opportunity to share any approaches or anything like that? Or do you feel like a lot of you are sort of at the point where you're just trying to get certain messages to your kind of local users? Just if there's anyone that wants to speak to that challenge.
This is a little bit different outcome or intended outcome, but might be helpful, like to Brenda. So I'm in Maryland near DC, and we have a paddling club that's really old. We've been around forever. The profile of the people in this club are, as you might imagine, because it was founded in 1955, is pretty white and old. I'm old, so I can say that. So, and trying to diversify the profile of the paddler has been like, we have done a terrible job. But what we did was we found a group who we love and or program people at this group called Soul Track DC. Those guys are in DC. They recruit people to do outdoor stuff all day long, all week long, every weekend, snorkeling, pulling invasive weeds, hiking, kayaking, climbing, everything. Super active. So when I attended a 5K, and there were like 500 people at this 5K, and they were all Black or not few brown. So that's their group that they serve. But what we did was we offer kayaking lessons to their groups through them with a kayak. So now we have this awesome program, pool sessions and then summer sessions with people that they recruit, and they're joining my club. But so they're sort of like brokering the access or as a portal. So maybe like if you're trying to reach those cities, maybe there's like a program person in those cities or a Parks and Rec person in those cities that can help you, because they can find the type of people you want, people who would drive, who have a car, who have a boat, who would come over to French Creek instead of you trying to reach everyone in Cincinnati and in Cleveland, everyone in Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? So, because it's worked so great, and we've made friends, we've engaged these people we would never be able to find, and we've got these new people in the community. Never would have been able to do it on our own. I'm looking at Raymond's comment. Oh, that's a big topic. Yeah, I don't know how much this is a water trail thing. This is CXS has been going in and replenishing rock that was moved in Helene by digging up the rocks in the river and using that for reconstructing the stuff they need, and their lawsuits for that. That's a pretty tough situation. Raymond, you want to talk anything more about that? Because that is a bad situation. And I see I had something that was covering some Mimi from Iowa. You certainly know
Can
this
you hear me?
Oh, is that Ray? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was just curious because I was on a discussion with someone over that whole issue, and they're kind of very hostile to anybody that uses a river right now. Over in the towns in that area where the put-in is for the Nolichucky River.
Right. Yeah,
I don't know if it's an actual water trail itself. It's definitely a paddling river.
right. Well, I think it is I don't know, there might be elements that are called a water trail, but I don't think there is a water trail group per se. There's a challenge there. There's no.
No, it's being slated as managed as a wild and scenic river. Supposedly, it is.
Yeah, it was deemed eligible, and it kind of lost in the suitability realm. So it's no longer being considered. But there is no, I mean, one thing that's tough about that is that there is no spokesperson for the river. There are a bunch of outfitters, or a bunch of people who use it a lot.
Well, French Broad Riverkeeper has done some work, but he's not really that involved with the Nolichucky.
No, they're mostly right.
Well,
Okay, then, yeah.
and there's not an official spokesperson for that watershed, but there is an active lawsuit happening on behalf of the work that you're talking about. So that is being represented in court.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but they were worried about it happening on the North Carolina side now.
Right, yeah, and that's open to public comment within the DEQ process for their permitting and all that. So yeah, definitely related to this topic, but not necessarily directly.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get that out there a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Freeman. So Mimi, I'm looking at your comment. Oh, Iowa DNR has state standards for universal design. We don't use ADA because there are no ADA. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about, that there is no such thing as ADA for, like, essentially, the way I describe it is once you leave the parking lot and you're heading to the river, there's no rules or requirements for how you design, build.
Well, and also, so if you have an access, you don't say it's ADA accessible because there are no standards for accesses for rivers. There are for lakes, but not for rivers.
Lakes,
And the
yeah,
other thing I was
at
thinking of,
marinas, like access points at a marina.
yeah, on a lake, there are total standards and all that kind of thing. But universal design, right? In the design world, universal design is a term that means it's been designed. It isn't ADA. In some cases, it's more than ADA, but in most cases, it's less, but it's the best that you can do. So you might look and do some like Googling on that term to see more about what it means. But Iowa uses what we call UD or universal design. We have standards that actually are, being revised right now, but have built a number of river accesses that pair an accessible sidewalk down to the water's edge with a traditional boat ramp. We have a kind of special design that was based on outreach with folks that were wheelchair users and paddlers around.
Thank you. I know that, can't remember the name, but the gal who just retired from the Forest Service, and she had been an advocate for universal design.
Janet Zeller.
Yes.
Yeah,
She
she
would
advised
say-
us on our standards.
As she did with our prepare to launch, and she would say that the ideal launch is a hard packed dirt launch that she could roll down to the water that was maybe 5 degrees or something like that, and everything else, because that's not always practical, right? But everything else was not as good.
But that's for her, right? And what we found in working with lots of different, when we use the word disability, it's all kinds of people. And it's not only, for everyone, it's not only just the hard pack launch. I mean, there's so many more variables that make something usable or desirable. So what you were saying earlier about really doing research about your local community is really important. And sometimes like there's a camp in Iowa that is a summer camp that's for kids that have really severe multiple limitations. And they are in, the kind of wheelchair where you're strapped in and you don't leave during the day. And they have found places like even just point bars that they can use and get a vehicle into. They're finding they're adapting so that they can take kids on the water still, but it's not like an access that was developed just for that. It was, they're kind of finding their own way. And so to the extent that you can find those people, and remember the elderly, just because I am almost verging on elderly myself, I just say that there are not good standards for that I've seen anywhere for just what makes people uncomfortable about a launch on a river. And if you're older, and again, it's just experience paddling with people that have different ability levels and limitations that helps us learn those kind of things.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to have some an ability to articulate levels or different, categories, colors or something of accessibility, and then kind of an organized means to communicate that. So if you're blind, that some of these access points are better for you than others. Or if you are short, or if you're a wheelchair person, 'cause I think it would be a heavy lift for every access point to accommodate every type of permutation of non-perfect accessibility or non-perfect user capacity, and communicate that to the whole world. So that's a challenge in front of us, I think. And maybe we have to, hopefully with this Water Trails Working Group and Lilia's help and guidance, we can begin to do some categorization so that there's a little bit better common vocabulary among those who are managing them, designing them, and then ultimately communicating so folks can use them. Like knowing what you're going to get to when you're thinking about going to a certain access point, and then it's really like that when you get there.
I just wanted to add one comment about,
Yeah.
I mentioned the low angle ramp that we put in. When we were doing that, we were also communicating with the emergency personnel along our water trail. There's a section of our water trail that has the highest number of rescue calls, and it's near where this launch is. And working with the local EMS, they ask us to make this launch wide enough that they could get their rescue craft in at that location. So I think it's really important to communicate with other users of your launch as well. Keep in mind that yes, you want to make it accessible for as many people as possible, but also communicating with emergency services and talk to them about where they might have limited access, where they might have problems getting into the water for a rescue. It was great that we could, keep their needs in mind when we were putting this launch in. We also have the benefit of having a senior retiree paddling group in the area that we are connected to. And so they tell us which launches are worst for the bad knees and, all the issues that are challenging them when they're trying to get in and out on the creek. So trying to get some feedback from those different stakeholder groups can be really valuable.
That's really great, Brenda.
That is great because they can articulate it. If their experience, they know they can tell you exactly what they don't like or what they do need. Yeah.
And kind of the balance that's the struggle is, wanting seating, like somewhere to sit and rest at the water's edge before you get in or to transition into your kayak, no matter, not just elderly people, but the problem there is designing something that is, can be permitted from a flood standpoint that won't hang up sediment and cause deposition on the launch. It's like there are desires, but you just don't put a bench right in a floodway because it won't be there when you go back after the next flood. So that's what's so fun about we're designing on water trails and planning for them is looking for opportunities to make things the most accessible you can within the fluvial system that you're working. It's so different, obviously, than a land trail.
Yeah.
Boy, so is it Louis or Lewis put in an interesting comment about the term. Sometimes it would be good to communicate to your audience the local perception towards paddlers. That seems a little challenging.
The private landowners, Louis? Or not just private?
No, I'm thinking of a situation in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on the waterway where there's proper landings there and access. And as you imagine at the beach, there's a lot of boat activity. Well, if you put your kayaks on one of those landings, you're going to get some people screaming at you or running over your kayaks. And so they have found out the hard way that they need to put in facilities just for kayaks, canoes, to the side of the regular motorized boat landings. And also, what you may find in communicating to some of your outfitters is like they do there, you have an access fee or a annual tag that you have to put on your boat in order to use those motorized ramps. Well, they charge the outfitters that plus an additional fee to put their kayaks and canoes in. So it's not always a friendly environment toward our paddlers, even though we're the ones cleaning up the rivers most of the time and never trashing the rivers or waterways. But
So
if you
is
got
it
someone
going back
coming
to
from out
the-
of town, they don't know about that.
Right. Well, going back to the, just your fellow users in a different type of craft yelling at you, is it because they perceive that they think you're not paying and they are or something, or that they think it's just for them? These docks?
Some of what I've been told by the outfitters when I deal with a good bit down at the beach is sometimes they feel like you're just in the way. And also sometimes you're going to mess up their fishing or their crabbing, or they just don't want you there. You're just in their way, period.
I mean, this is a bigger problem of, and it goes back to the North Carolina one too, of getting the word out somehow of the outdoor recreation economy from non-motorized, of how many dollars go into the system because of them being there. And like you're saying, also the good, you're doing cleanups and probably doing re-veg projects to try to increase habitat. Like, it's just, how do we get that education out there to say, hey, we're not the bad guys here?
Yeah, a
Yeah, but
component
if
of
you're
that
looking,
is that a lot of access points are built with the trust fund. So with gas tax and with angling excise tax. So it's a big amount of money then that can get distributed to states to build stuff like that. And they feel like they built it with motorized boaters money, and they view kayakers as speed bumps. It's changing a little bit, but
if your audience is looking at your website or whatever coming in, you need to make sure they know, well, don't use that landing that's so easy to unload your boat on there off your trailer. We got a special landing that you have to use, or you're going to have an unhappy trip from the very beginning.
well, you guys, I think we could take another question or two, but maybe we can move forward, Tally, on the slideshow. Have a couple.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Hold
Okay.
on. I got way too many things open. Let me see what I can
Yeah,
go back to sharing. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Forgot there were more
no worries.
slides.
And I'm going to put in there's a picture of Lilia. Did you see that, Lilia?
Not really.
Did you go back one? It's a beautiful picture on the Allagash.
It didn't want to. Oh, look at that.
Yeah. So I wanted to thank Tally. Well, we were sorry that Darrell couldn't make it. I put a little link to a survey. Tally, you can go to the we have YouTube channel. We have over 250 videos from past trainings, webinars, meetups, and things like that on the channel. And then here are a few things that are coming up. Next month, we're gonna go back to the survey, and James Major is organizing this. We did a survey last year about what water trails managers told us they needed. And what we talked about today was a little bit of that. But we're going to go into more talking about the different water trails organizational structure. What are they like? Who do you belong to? Where does your funding come from? That kind of thing. We're doing a trip on the Buffalo River. It'd be pretty awesome. And then we're going to be doing we're going to begin a Wild and Scenic Rivers webinar series, starting with visual resource and inventorying. And then some of us here are going to huddle up in Ashland, Oregon at the Biennial River Management Symposium, where Lilia is doing a session on water trails, and we'll have some ad hoc sessions, I think, talking a little bit more about what the Water Trails Working Group can do together. And then we'll be back to you after that. So next slide, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. So please, give us some thoughts. The survey takes 2 seconds to fill out. James put in the link for next month. And if you're a member, you'll see this we'll get this out also. But thank you for, if you have other questions, we can hang out for a couple of minutes, but thank you for attending. We hope this was helpful. Thank you, Brenda and Mimi and Raymond, for your input. Really appreciate it.